Try as he might, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe can't seem to find ways to jumpstart the country's economy. The latest figures show GDP growth stalled between April and June. Azhar Sukri takes a closer look.
After a promising start to the year, Japan's economy seems to have hit a brick wall yet again. GDP expanded by just 0.1% in the second quarter. That was less than an average market forecast of 0.7% growth, and far lower than the 2% expansion in the first quarter. Its economy minister has blamed weak sentiment among companies and a powerful earthquake in April that killed 50 people.
Everyone asks about individual consumption, but this time I think there was an extraordinary factor that was from the Kumamoto earthquake. It caused consumer sentiment to stall, and the tourism industry in Kyushu especially fell with a thud.
People aren't spending as much as they used to. Private consumption grew by a weaker than expected 0.2% in the second quarter. And companies aren't spending either. Capital expenditure fell by 0.4%. A strong yen is making Japanese goods more expensive. A fall in overseas demand knocked 0.33% off GDP. Last month, the Bank of Japan stepped up its purchases of bonds. The program pumps billions of dollars of cash into the economy each year to try and boost spending. And earlier this month, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced a $133 billion boost in spending to try to stimulate the economy. Abe came to power more than 3 years ago with a promise to break Japan out of nearly 2 decades of falling prices and anemic growth. His shock tactics, described as Abenomics, worked for a while. But economies in Japan and much of the rest of the developed world are looking shaky. Some say the government needs to implement even more radical measures, but it may be running out of options.
Well, Azhar joins me live in the studio. Azhar, what more could Abe do to stimulate the economy then?
Yeah, he's already delayed a proposed rise in the sales tax back to 2019. He's pushed that back. When they last raised the sales tax in 2014, the economy contracted. He can't afford for that to happen this time. Part of the problem that Japan's facing, of course, is the strength of the yen. Part of the problem there is Brexit, funnily enough. After Brexit, the yen strengthened enormously, and that has kind of made an export-led recovery look even less likely. So he's running out of options, as we said there, and right now there doesn't seem to be much more that he and the Bank of Japan can do than to just throw more money at the problem.
And what about the issue of structural reform, so talking between governments and companies? Does it boil down to that? Yeah,
this really is the big one. I mean, when Shinzo Abe launched his whole Abenomics strategy when he came to power, this was the third of the 3 arrows, so, as he called them, the first 2 being monetary and fiscal stimulus. By structural reforms, essentially what we're talking about is making companies more efficient. But with Japanese companies and the government being so closely tied together, these massive conglomerates, the so-called kairetsu, it's very difficult for that to happen. And then, of course, you've got the whole demographic issues of aging population and all of those things. So he's got a tough ask.
OK. Azhar, thank you.